Hello, everyone. Welcome to Keeping the Beat, an engaging web series hosted live by TNMEA in partnership with the CMA Foundation. Tune in weeknights, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 8, 7 Central to learn from and interact with music professionals from around the globe representing every facet of the vast world of music. Today is May 26th. My name is Danny Clay, and I am a freelance composer and teaching artist. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to you about some ways that I've been pursuing music making through creative prompts with musicians and non-musicians of all ages. And I'd like to explore a few ways that the creative prompt can be used to build remote collaborative projects both in and out of the digital classroom during this period of social distancing. So whether you're an artist, an educator, a curious community member with an itch to make something new, I hope that you'll leave this presentation with a few ideas for how you might be able to use the creative tools you have available around you to investigate art making through this idea of the creative prompt. I encourage you to interact by replying to this live video stream with your questions and comments, which we will respond to throughout the hour with the assistance of my colleague Mario Godoy. Right on
Hello,
cue,
everyone.
Mario. One disclaimer, while this is being streaming live, it will remain on the Keeping the Beat Facebook page for future reference, so as such, your comments will also remain a part of the archive. Mario, thanks for being with me. I'm really grateful to have you moderating. You're such a talented educator and composer in your own right, and I'm just really grateful to be able to chat with you about these things.
I'm so excited to be here, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Cool. I'm gonna try. Excuse me. Still a little Zoom clumsy. I'm gonna try to hop over to a little presentation I've made, and it should ideally take less than 10 seconds. But we'll see. You can start counting down. So I wanted to give you a little background about where I'm coming from as an artist and as a teacher, and show you sort of how I arrived at some of these ideas that I'm hoping to share with you. So my background is as a composer. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in music composition. But right out of school, I got a job teaching music to elementary schoolers part-time. And through that process, I really fell in love with designing creative projects that gave young musicians and folks with very little musical experience a chance to step into the role of like composer, performer, interpreter, and working collaboratively with such young musicians really profoundly shaped my outlook on art making. And it led to this really crucial question that I come back to again and again in my teaching and arts practices, which is how can I make the creative process feel less like work and more like play? This question has been something that's been on my mind for quite a few years now. And in looking for answers to this question, it's shed a lot of light for me on how to demystify the creative process and reveal just what a joyful, beautiful, celebratory process making art can be. And so I want to investigate how we can imbue this spirit of creativity in our lessons as teachers and our practice as artists. So really quickly, I've been thinking a lot about a few basic ideas as it relates to composing and art making, and I just wanted to run them by you. It's going to start off really abstract and then get very specific very fast. Some thoughts that I found useful is I love the notion that when it comes down to brass tacks, creativity is just about making choices between things. And composing is just a matter of organizing things. One thing that I've found really freeing is that composing is not inventing something new, but rather it's about organizing things that already exist, like sounds, words, images, movements, and combining these existing things in new ways. It's not building something from scratch, It's about gathering things that we notice and find interesting and making choices about which of those things go where and when they happen in time. And once you realize that, for me at least, it was this revelation that it's not this mysterious process that I once thought it was. And when you restrict yourself to a few simple choices, you realize just how overwhelming things can be when you have too many choices. And one thing that a deft creator is able to do is filter out the choices that they find the most useful in a given moment and expand their range of choices when they're feeling too limited or restricted. So the realization that creativity is this practice of making choices based on resources that we already have in our environments and imaginations, this for me has been really useful. And so what it comes down to is when you're creating something, you essentially have these two factors at play. And that's what materials we notice and find interesting enough to put together and how we choose to put those things together. And it might seem like this is insanely vague and not helpful at all, but this is where sort of like my topic of this discussion comes in, which is the creative prompt. For me, the creative prompt is like the key that unlocks every creative door that you can possibly imagine, because it's completely adaptable to suit an artist's needs and the resources that they have available. It can be as open-ended or restrictive as one desires, and it offers essentially the most important thing in making something, which is just a place to start. As soon as you have a place to start, you you can go off in any direction and things can shape themselves in infinite ways. But having a place to start is so crucial. What I want to look at with all of you tonight is I want to talk about how we can use some creative prompts for remote collaboration. And I'm coming from this angle as a composer, of course, and a music teacher. But I'm hoping that these prompts can be adaptable across a variety of practices and disciplines. And I'm really excited to offer these ideas as starting points for you. So as we go, please chime in with questions or ideas about how this might be useful for you. Okay, I'm gonna start with my first prompt here. This is the one that I've been kind of obsessed with lately since we've gone into shelter in place. It's the idea of a scavenger hunt. It's super simple. A scavenger hunt is getting a list of things and finding them, right? One of the things that I got excited about was how can you take the idea of a scavenger hunt and apply it to sounds. So I've been sending this scavenger hunt that you see on your screen to a variety of students, teachers, and professional musicians. Mario is one of them. And this is just like a really simple example of what a scavenger hunt, a sonic scavenger hunt, could look like. Someone can create their own scavenger hunt list for themselves or for a friend, or exchange scavenger hunts with each other. I decided to focus on making my scavenger hunt abstract, so it could allow the folks that are pursuing this scavenger hunt to either find different objects around their house or perform all of these things on a single instrument. So I'm going to show you a few scavenger hunts, completed scavenger hunts I've gotten back from people. And as we watch some of these, I'd love to open the question up to you how this idea could be useful for you. Like, what would your scavenger hunt, who would it be for? What kinds of sounds would you encourage people to find, and what sort of means? So here's a few submissions I've received. love about these is, again, my friends Greer and Mark both chose to find objects around their house to complete this scavenger hunt. My friend Sunny used her cello to explore it. And I've even seen submissions. None Such Records a few days ago did a version of this scavenger hunt using excerpts from their CD catalog, which is crazy to me. You can see that on their Facebook page. But the thing that I love about this is how open ended it is. And then the really exciting thing for me is that as a prompt, the scavenger hunt, remember we talked about uh, creating being about materials that you find and then how you organize them. What a scavenger hunt does so well is that it allows you to find materials in a really sort of prescribed way. You end up with this finite collection of sounds, and then you're free to organize those sounds however you want to. So I'm really excited to play for you a video I just saw earlier today. It's one of Mario's high school students doing taking the sounds that they put together that they collected with the scavenger hunt and creating a composition by editing the video. And then I'd love to, after I play this, turn it over to Mario and maybe we can chat about how his students approached this assignment. Mario, that video is so awesome.
I love it so much. So I approached Danny about this as soon as I saw his scavenger hunt idea. Um, I've been teaching this whole entire last quarter. I'm a high school teacher myself. I teach music. I also teach audio production, and I teach Spanish as well. But I teach the high school band. And our school is a pretty small school of only about 100, 110, 120 kids. So my band is about 11 people total. And we've been mostly doing, rock, pop, jazz, and blues things. But as we moved to remote learning, band became less about, performing together and creating music together. And I was trying to find a project that would really bring music back into our structure. But once I saw Danny's scavenger hunt, I said, this is really a perfect assignment for these musicians to create something that they wouldn't necessarily create otherwise, right? They're finding all of these different sounds, all these various soundscapes, things that remind them of other sounds, and they're finding really interesting ways to connect them together. And I thought that that was a really interesting way to kind of get their creative juices flowing again, because if you're an educator, you've seen how this whole entire last quarter of our school year has been really kind of just awkward and very tricky to teach and keep students engaged. This was a way that I got the students to engage, and I got some really phenomenal projects. My one thing that I asked of them was to have at least two of those sounds be, in quotes, musical sounds. So that could be sounds of their instrument that they were actually playing, or whatever else they thought was musical. So I got an example of a student like playing, just like recording the radio, and that was their musical example. So it can really spark creativity, but at the same time, like what Danny was saying, it's a place to start. That creative prompt is a place to start. And I wish I would have shown this to you. They all created scores for their pieces with the symbols that you had made.
We will
And
get there in just a moment, so I'm glad you
oh,
brought
I mean,
that up.
symbols. So it's been a really fun project. And also the students learned a little bit about video editing, which they might not normally learn about in an audio production class. I'm sorry, in a band class. So that was a lot of fun, and we used just free video editors, right? Either ones that come with a Mac or ones that you can download for free on a PC. So this technology is available to those who have this particular have computers or phones. It works out really nicely.
Well, yeah, it does seem like that element of production is just becoming sort of a necessary skill that both us as teachers and our students are sort of developing now,
Mhm.
and I'm really excited. You know, even the examples I saw from your students were already so skillfully done. I'm excited to see what happens as hopefully next year, if you're still meeting online, then you'll get a chance to maybe play with some of these concepts and push them farther. The cool thing that I love about this concept is, again, it's a starting point, but there's lots of different places that it can go.
Definitely.
And yeah, so I wanted to show one example. You know, again, like, the idea here is that this is something that someone could do on their own, but it's also something that could be done as a collaboration, right? By simply sharing the sounds, by having a group of people share the sounds that they found, and have someone essentially just collage them together in some way or create a montage. I turned this same scavenger hunt over to my friends in Kronos Quartet, who have they're a string quartet, and they have close to 50 years of experience now playing together. And now that they can't play together, they're looking for all these new ways to engage one another remotely. So I sent them this scavenger hunt about a week after the shelter in place in San Francisco, and they sent me their realizations. And so I, acting as composer, I sort of collaged their scavenger hunts together to create a 1 minute long piece. So the the thing that excites me about this is that you can, even though you're submitting sounds and working remotely, you can still have this sort of culminating shared sonic space. I feel like this little doodle kind of says it all for me about why I love the creative prompt. By having this prompt and having multiple people get involved as participants, you wind up with just this collection, this incredible collection. No matter what the prompt, you wind up with this collection of sounds that are united by this idea. And from those sounds, the things that you can make with them are virtually endless. So again, having this prompt as a starting point is really a super useful key to creating this kind of shared space, even though we can't share a space physically. I'm curious, Mario, if there's any thoughts on this before we start to sort of drift away from this idea of a scavenger hunt. Are there any questions or thoughts from folks on this idea?
Yeah, I hope you can hear me okay because my stuff seems to be lagging a little bit and I'm not 100% sure why, but
You sound good to me.
okay, cool, awesome. So there's a few people who have been chiming in, mostly with comments, not necessarily with questions per se, but I think that there's some really fascinating comments. So first, Liz says, "I think this would be great for a music appreciation class as they're learning the elements of music. Could expand to include tempo, meter, timbres, pretty much anything." I thought that that's really fascinating. I used to teach a music
Absolutely.
appreciation class, and yeah, this is absolutely something that I would love to see.
Well, yeah, I mean, that again, that original, I'll at the very end of this talk, I'll post all of these things in written form. But yeah, that original scavenger hunt thing, it just seems like, a lot of those things could be, as Liz is sort of describing, sort of amped up a little, for to use a language that's for a certain, age level, or experience level. So like a low sound becomes a bass sound or a tenor sound, or
Yeah,
a baritone sound, and you can replace a lot of these terms with more specific things to challenge your students. Yeah.
absolutely. And then Chelsea says next, I love this. It is so accessible for students of any age because it doesn't have scary structure or require an understanding of theory. And I think that's a really important one, that there's so much music to be made that doesn't necessarily require that theory knowledge base beforehand.
Yeah, that's actually, I want to make sure we get a chance to chat and hear other questions and comments. I'll be sure to go through and respond with some follow-ups after the hour. But that's a really great segue, I think, to sort of the next topic, which is sort of recreating theory using drawings and notation. Are there any other thoughts to throw out there now, Mario, about the
It's
scavenger hunt?
a lot of people are kind of commenting that it's just really great to have this sort of creative structure without having to have the previous musical or compositional experience. So a big thank you to all of you who are commenting about that. Nita even says that it's a kind of a 21st century spin-off of a John Cage type mindset, which I think is super neat.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I think, it's cool to hear John Cage's name just because I think experimental music, and a lot of these things that we'll see as I keep going, are definitely experimental projects, but experimental music is such a great meeting point to sort of unpack a lot of the things about music that we find scary and confusing. When you view music as a big experiment, and sort of ask those same questions that a lot of experimental composers did, like what is a sound, what is music, what is notation, you I think it gives younger musicians especially to really build a meaning for music from the ground up, which I think is like super cool. Great. Should we move on?
Yeah, yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. Again, the scavenger hunt, sort of as Mario had mentioned briefly, the scavenger hunt can be sort of a springboard to start to talk about something else, which is notation, one of my favorite things ever. And so I'm gonna throw out a lot of creative prompts that relate to notation. So you saw these symbols a little earlier, but I'll show them again. So I took this scavenger hunt and just created a tiny little drawing, like a little doodle for each sound to represent each sound. And why this excites me is that by having just a little drawing instead of having to write out low sound, high sound, long sound, etc., you have a key through which you can start to compose. Again, making these simple choices and just creating orders and patterns of things. You can create a little piece of music with your found scavenger orchestra. So this idea of drawing a sound or sound drawings, which is, in musical jargon, it's notation, right? Creating a drawing to represent a sound and vice versa. This, for me, I think this is a really exciting concept that we can explore remotely in a collaborative setting, because there's lots of different ways that this flow of information can go. And I'd like to show you just a couple of projects I've done that play on this. So the first idea is just creating a drawing to match a sound, designing a note. So I asked my elementary school students to create. Their job was to design a vocal note, a note that they would sing with their voice, and they had to make a few decisions, if it was going to be low, high, loud, soft, short, long. And for older students, I changed these to treble, bass, legato, staccato, etc. And then they created a drawing to match the sound. And essentially, the more I thought about this week, that's what composers do. At least in the classical tradition, a big part of our job is to make sure that what we write down matches the sound in some way. It's purely about communication, you know. So in this case, I asked single students to design their own note and drawing, and then I paired up their recordings and their drawings and just created a little montage. So here's a few of the sounds they came up with.
Ba, ba,
By far my favorite one right here.
ba, 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 ba. Dun 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 dun.
What, Metallica or something. I don't. I'm not sure what band that was. Again, this felt like a really exciting starting point because there was one student who acted as their own composer, notator, interpreter. All of those things were one person. I then got excited about the idea of breaking up the roles of notators and interpreters, composers notating and interpreters to a couple of different parties. So I wound up with this idea where I played a little bit of a Beethoven string quartet for some third graders, and I gave them. You can see some of the drawings up here. I gave them 4 staves, and I just told them to draw what they thought the music looked like, however they wanted to. And as you can see from the notations, they're all over the map, right? So they got a chance to create a notation based on their instincts, but not based on there was no sort of required language for them to use. It was just their visual imaginations, and then I turned all of those drawings over to a professional string quartet, my friends in the group Friction Quartet, and then again, it's probably sensing a pattern here, a video that sort of collages and creates a montage of some of these different interpretations. So the cool thing about this project in my mind is that this is just one way a prompt like this could work, right? If you imagine these 3 categories, material, notation, and performance, you could play a group of students any kind of material for them to create a notated version of. It could even be original material, their own material. And then the role of notator can be virtually anybody. And you could use, again, a more limited set of tools, like a core set of symbols or something like that. And then again, performance. Not everybody has a string quartet on hand, especially nowadays. All my string quartets that I have on hand are not available. But I think that the performance role can easily be opened up to other students, the same students. And so by breaking things down into this sort of little workflow, you end up with all of these possibilities for making it a collaboration. The next notation game, the notation prompt that I wanted to share with you is the idea of sound keys. We already sort of looked at this a little with the Scavenger Hunt, but essentially this comes down to finding sounds either on an instrument or in your surroundings, creating, describing how to make the sound, and then creating a simple drawing to represent the sound. Some ideas that worked really well with some of my younger students and older students as well was restricting what was getting notated, what objects or materials they were starting with, and then creating a sound key for sounds on just one object. Here I asked a group of third graders to create a sound key for items on a desk. And again, playing around with this flow, this process, and dividing it up among people. Instead of having the students compose this time, I actually took the sound keys that my third graders made and turned them over to professional composers. So these professional composers composed a piece using the invented notation by the students. And then you can see on the right, there's this piece by my friend Phyllis Chen, who's a wonderful composer who wrote her first trio for desk sounds. And she composed it for my third graders, and the third graders did a performance of it. This idea of sound keys, again, is super powerful, I think, because it limits the materials that you're working with. And I also wonder sort of like what keys for other artistic materials would be like movement keys, or I don't know, image keys. I'm curious how this could be adapted to other forms of media too. I took it one step further with my fourth and fifth graders. They were learning recorder and ukulele, and they also created symbols to match sounds on their specific instruments. And the goal was to create a little method book of experimental sounds on their instrument that could be shared with the following year's students. So it was a multi-year project, and they created different pieces for their instrument organized by difficulty, and then sort of had to figure out how to create a method book of different pieces with different levels of difficulty to share. I was going to play just a couple of these with recorder and ukulele to give you an idea of what they can look like. Oh, whoops, sorry. This I hope you could see at that last example, they made a canon, like an imitative, two-part piece. It's a pretty sophisticated concept. And again, like by taking these techniques that they invented and just seeing them through, like we were talking about earlier, it gave them a chance to really dig in and experience these really fundamental aspects of composition and theory from the ground up, like what it means to create music in one part, in unison, what it means to create music in two parts. All of these things appeared organically without needing to talk about specific pitches and, instrumental techniques and things like that. It was things they invented on their own, which I think is just like really exciting, especially nowadays when people and students have a lot of time on their hands to invent stuff. For younger students, I just wanted to throw out the idea of letters as notation. This is such a fundamental way of notating things, right? And so having a core set of letters that a student knows and just creating a piece using letters. As you can see here, you can organize these letters into different patterns to create beats. You can talk about beatboxing that way. you can make the letters different sizes to talk about dynamics. As you can see on the right example, you can elongate certain things. It's all of all of these same principles that we explore in music can be explored through letters as notation as well. Does anyone have any thoughts on this idea of notation and how it might be useful? I'm gonna get out of here and what do we got, Mario?
Okay, so as far as we don't have anything on notation quite yet, but I would love to see some questions about notation in particular. But we do have a couple of questions for you. Nathan asks, what kind of reactions or comments do you get from students when they hear their works realized by others?
Oh, it's a good question, Nathan. Um, I think, you know, it's I can't I've never experienced anything that's other than empowering. I feel like it's so easy, especially with when we're talking about experimental music, to have students that think it's easy or don't necessarily feel like they don't need to put in a lot of effort. You can have a student that scribbles something down, but as soon as you have a musician, especially professional musicians, that can take that scribble, and even if it does sound like a messy scribble, they can really take that, and they put their talent and resources into that scribble. I've never had a student that was anything other than grateful and excited about the creative validation that comes from that. Yeah.
And then Chelsea asks, do you ever have multiple performances of these compositions to illustrate different interpretations?
That's a great question. With the pieces that are developed by a specific group of students, the beautiful thing about that is that it's so easy to trade compositions. So if you have five people that are playing ukulele and one score, you have five different interpretations, right? And not only that, but you have the ability to pair people up, if or do a group interpretation. And there's no shortage of things to discuss, both as musicians performing and as interpreters, when you have even just a small group of people.
Another question is, have you ever been, this one's from Julie. Have you ever been asked to adapt these compositions or collaborations to more popular or vernacular styles, so maybe outside of the experimental or improvisatory genres?
Oh, good question. Not really. I feel like, Mario, you showed me a video collage that you did recently too. I think now that we're sort of living in this world of video editing, it's a lot easier to create things that are a little more beat centric. You know what I mean? Like, the thing about a lot of experimental music is that there's just like no beat, right? And as soon as you put something on a beat, it's like it's
Oh,
more
that's
sort of
rude.
accessible, right? Yeah, totally. But I think one of the things that I love about all these things is that they totally could be done to a beat, right? I would love to hear like a super creative, like, beat oriented remix of some of these notations.
Send them to me. I'll do it.
Right on, man. Thanks.
Let's see. We have Edward, um, who says, this is outstanding, particularly for younger students prior to formal music training. Um, Let me find the question here. It says, having these thought processes in place, followed by learning to play a musical instrument, will provide, and I'm thinking outside your box for a moment, courage when it comes to improvisational experiences leading to jazz and commercial music. So actually, that's actually a really good point. Do you mind if I field a little bit of something here really
That's
quickly?
great. No, I love it. Yeah.
So as a high school teacher, I see a lot of students who are just so afraid to experiment and improvise, and really it just comes down to them not having had that experience growing up in their musical development. Like, improvisation was never a part of the core of their musical creativity. It was always about, interpreting what's on the page. So I actually really love these sorts of exercises to really get a different type of mindset out of these students. And I love that it definitely does feel different approaching it from an elementary school to a high school, but ultimately they're the exact same, right? Maybe slightly better drawings.
Yeah,
uh,
no, it's totally.
Maybe
And
not.
Yeah, and I hope that yeah, I really appreciate that it sounds like Edward and you, Mario, are able to kind of look past the yeah, like what I'm showing you, which is a bunch of drawings by by third graders and stuff, which is no trivial thing. What they're doing is like very sophisticated composition. But like, yeah, there's ways to take these concepts, and I would be super curious to see how some of these prompts would, yeah, could be adapted to, yeah, like high school improvisation exercises or something like that. Again, it comes down really to like making choices and organizing those choices in some way, right? That's cool.
So we do have a question about notation centric. It says, do you think young people or any age group really feel constrained by Western notation? And is this an approach, and is this approach liberating in a way?
I mean, I know I feel constrained by Western notation. Do you, do you, Mario?
Oh, of course, absolutely. Um, it's it's hardwired in there, but I think that these sorts of exercises, even from professional composer standpoint, are extremely liberating, right? You don't have to adhere to these 12 pitches or the microtones in between using this particular type of notation, but I do love the idea that notation is still right the direction for the or to produce this piece of art. And I think that that's
Yeah.
still important in realizing a piece of music, a composed piece of music, I should say. I guess is the difference here.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think the learning as a lot of us that grew up in the United States did, learning Western notation is it's important. I mean, it's useful. It's very useful. But I think like these exercises are just sort of reminding students, at least the students that I've worked with, that might have like piano lessons and stuff like that. It's reminding them that they're a means to an end. They should be notation should be helpful and not hindering. Or if it's hindering, it should be hindering in playful ways, right?
Yeah, sure.
This
And then we have.
actually. Oh, sorry,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. Oh, we just have one other comment, not necessarily a question, but it brings up a good point. It says letters as notation is amazing, and I want to talk to you about that later. But it would be interesting to see the creativity that comes from students with different cultural backgrounds. So you know how students in various socioeconomic situations could approach this music in different ways is a really fascinating um, thing to explore.
Yeah, again, I'd love to hear from a lot of my teaching experience has been with a relatively small group of students here in San Francisco. So again, I'd be really excited to hear how some of these strategies might work, depending on, again, for teachers and artists, what your where you practice what you do, and what students you're working with, that kind of thing. I'm really glad that the letter thing popped up, because I want to try an experiment that I've never tried before. I want to show you. I'm actually going to ask for everyone that's watching for all of your help here. I'm going to try to turn the Facebook comments into a score, but I want to explain this prompt to you here. So the live experiment I want to try is a soundscape. So a soundscape is a collection of sounds that occur in one place. So like a beach's soundscape might have waves and wind and birds and stuff like that. But right now, because we're all in different physical spaces, our soundscape actually has the potential to be much more interesting, much bigger. We can create this shared community digital soundscape by capturing sounds from our homes and transmitting them via the internet. One way we could do this, of course, is by recording our sounds and creating a compilation that way. But what, I want to try this letter as notation idea, and I want, if you're willing to, I'm going to give you a little prompt right now. I want you to listen at home, or wherever you are. I want you to listen for one sound you notice right now, and I want you to think about how you would spell that sound as letters, and then share that in the Facebook comments. So here's two examples that I wrote out from yesterday, my clothes dryer, and then I attempted to, create the clothes dryer sound I heard using just letters, and then my cat drinking water. And so, yeah, as we go, I'm going to show you a few more short things, but then at the very end of our time together, I'd love to check these out and see what we came up with. go crazy. The last idea I wanted to talk about for remote collaboration is the idea of a mystery box. I've been really excited about these for a while now, and it's just a two-step process. You send someone a box with some stuff in it, and that box can have any kind of materials, right? It could have like scraps of notation. It doesn't have to be completed music, just ideas, prompts, instructions, instrument, any kind of resources. And then you send that box to someone that you want to send something to and challenge them to create something using the materials in the box. So this has been a process that's been really exciting to me for the last few years, and seems it's even more useful now. Here's a couple of different boxes I've sent to people. So some of them, as you can see, have a lot of notation. Some of them just have a bunch of like toys and stuff like that. Some of them have puzzles with no key to solve them to. Again, the idea is to just like throw in a lot of ideas that might spark someone's imagination. And a box doesn't have to be physical if you're not comfortable going to the post office and sending something physical these days. A box can be just a collection of sounds, or videos or anything really, PDFs, something online as a folder. I did a digital box type collaboration with those ukulele and recorder sounds. I sent them to middle schoolers and asked them to create new pieces, remix pieces, using only the ukulele and recorder sounds. Here's Jenna's interpretation of some of those sounds. I like it because it's almost in a beat like we were talking about, but not quite, But she did some interesting, processing and stuff like that. Another digital box that I made a few years ago was with the help of some younger students again. For Halloween, I asked them to make a list of scary sounds, which were amazing, like the sound of a witch making eyeball jam, and the sound of a man saying creepily, "Are you having a nice day?" and the sound of spiders crawling up your back. So the box was actually just a list of prompts, a list of sound prompts, and I again turned them to middle schoolers, and their job was to create those sounds using their voice and objects and manipulating them in a GarageBand type workstation called Soundtrap. Here's two of those sounds and the prompts from the kindergartners.
You having a nice day?
It's like that last one is like the sound of a sixth grade girl. Love that. Yeah. So again, this box idea is really exciting to me, as a way for collaborating remotely. And I'd encourage you to think, what would you put in a box? Who would you send a box to? That sort of thing. If you'd like to share, please feel free. How are we looking, Mario?
We're looking pretty good. We've got, let's see, I'm counting, including my own sound. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 6 different sounds.
Cool. Are you able to screen share those sounds? So I'm hoping what we can do is just look at these sounds, and then Mario and I can act as sort of interpreters. If you at home want to be an interpreter too, that's great. But let's see.
Let's see. I've got this. 1 second.
This is a huge experiment, by the way. Okay, cool. Great. Okay. So it's really helpful to see that people have described what the sounds are. One way that you could approach this, I could have said that you don't tell us what the objects are and we have to guess what they are, which adds a level of fun to it. And then it's really open-ended. You could have multiple people record what what they think the sound is, either with their voices or with an instrument or something like that. But I don't know, Mario, do you want to try? Do you want to try doing some of these? You want to do it with your voice? Do you have any instruments handy?
Oh, let's see. Do I have instruments handy?
I have a harpsichord that I'm borrowing. Maybe I'll try to do some of these sounds on a harpsichord.
Uh, I might have. No, I don't really have anything
That's okay.
around.
Let's do some vocal stuff. I mean, that's you know, vocals are easy to find if you're not shy. Okay, let's see here. So computer fan. Let's both try it at the same time. Ready? Go. I hope everyone's doing this at home too. All right. How about dog snoozing? Okay, ready? Go. Cool. Someone's husband coughing. Quam. Quam. Cool. Partner making dinner. Broom. Ooh. I feel like I'm missing something on this one. I'm trying to imagine what's being made here.
I want to know what bum is, but
Yeah, it's like things dropping into a pot, maybe.
hmm.
Let's see, air conditioner. Um, oh,
Oh.
oh, and then okay, the sound of things blow. I'm glad you're a passenger, whoever you are. Okay, let's see here. So something like that. These things could also be. I'm so glad this is going to be online forever.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, these things. So there's a lot you could do with these sounds. Again, thanks for.
Sorry, Danny. We have two more sounds
Oh,
that
great.
need.
Okay, we got time for just these last two. Okay. Durr. This is great.
Right.
All right, so
It sounds like a phone vibrating.
that's actually pretty good though. I like that. And then another air conditioning. I love these because again, what we have now, like if you deleted the prompts, the actual descriptions, you have this collection of notation, right? And with these notations, you could do a lot of things. We could Mario and I or whoever could, pick ones that we wanted to do and alternate. We could try doing random ones all at the same time to create this kind of, again, collective soundscape of all the places that you are. We could try to interpret these on instruments like I don't know what a computer fan on harpsichord would be like. I don't know. I don't know. That's the best I can do. But there's all of these different interpretive games you can play with this now that we have these things down. Again, the idea of a prompt is just having a place to start, and from there the possibilities are really infinite. We're running short on time. I really hope that that everyone watching got some at least some ideas here. The thing that I wanted to mention is that I'll be posting a little document about 20 pages of all of the activities that I described here, maybe a few extra ones, and I'd love to hear from you. I included links to my website and email. I'd love to hear from you, even beyond this evening, about how these might be useful for you, what kind of prompts you find useful in your own practice, and again, sort of how we can use this simple idea to find those moments of connection and collaboration with our students, with each other. Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, we've got a couple of comments here. Not as many questions, but some fascinating comments. Julie says, Danny, it's very interesting to think about the cultural differences between the Bay Area third graders and those here where I live in rural Northwest Tennessee. It would be fun to try to get different interpretations to resonate with different groups and compare. So maybe it's worth doing a cross-country collaboration of some kind.
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the really, Julie, that's one of the really exciting things about this kind of thing, right? Is that it's not just about, it doesn't have to be about collaborating with, the students in one classroom, right? It can be collaborating with, again, all of these things could begin in one state and go to a different country and then come back or go to a professional orchestra in England, or that I wholly welcome that thinking of trying to make things as collaborative, and again sharing this with as many different communities as possible to create a shared space.
Another comment. Nathan says those boxes are so amazing, and I will also say that I really love those boxes. And then Edward says that as a composer, these are some thought processes I will actually use in my own creative process. Cool stuff. So yeah.
Yay, cool. I'm so glad
And
to hear
then
that.
Christine says that this sort of reminds me of the Stomp Show, kind of taking some more out of the box sounds and creating something really interesting and compelling with them.
Totally. I mean, I think that totally applies. And Stomp has a beat, which is helpful. Again, that sort of seems to be the unspoken lesson of the day. Put it to a beat. um, well, I really appreciate everyone's thoughts. I'm really glad to hear that these were useful. And again, let's keep talking. Feel free to reach out. Mario, thank you so much for all your insights and thoughtfulness. I'm really grateful that you are a creative partner in crime in this investigation.
Thank you for having me. This is a pleasure.
And thank you so much to TNMEA and Keeping the Beat for this, again, incredible resource for musicians and curious minds everywhere. I'm gonna sign off here. So tune in weeknights, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 8/7 Central to watch Keeping the Beat live. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and don't forget to like and share. Our next show is Thursday, May 28th, and our presenter will be music education consultant Angela Ammerman. Presenters who wish to host an episode should apply via tnmea.org. Thanks again, Mario. It's been really great talking to you. Thanks to all of you for your comments. Let's keep chatting, and I'm really excited to keep this conversation going. I hope everyone stays well and stays creative and curious and kind. So, talk to you soon.